Okay, so today we're going to review modules. Okay, so our first question is about dining room turnover. Question is, if we have serves 450 guests in our room that has 170 seats, what's the seat turnover for the night? So how do we go about calculating that? Okay, so we're going to take the total number of guests divided by 170. So it's 450. And we get this 2.64706. Normally we'd round this just to one decimal point. So 2.6 is the answer that you would want to put. Any questions on that? Okay, this next one is going to be a little bit more complicated. I'll work over here, I guess. Okay, so we want to calculate the number of guests required to generate a profit of 44,000 when we know our sales price per unit is $13. When we know our fixed cost is $130,000, and we have a contribution rate of 0.400. Okay, so does this bring back any memories? It's been a while since we've been talking about these things. Okay, so the know the number of guests. So we're going to add fixed cost plus profit, but then we have to use the average contribution margin that we're going to divide that by. So we know the contribution rate, and we know the sales price per unit. So the contribution margin is going to be $13 times 0.400. I guess I should write that. Okay, so it's the sales price per unit times the contribution rate. And so that's going to equal 174,000. So this, again, what is this telling me? The number of guests required. Okay, so we always round that up. So the answer that we would want to see is 33,462 guests. That's how many people we would need to have come in a certain period of time to earn that profit based on how we do with our sales in the restaurant. So if that's for a month, we need a little bit more than 1,000 people a day to come into our restaurant. Any questions on that one? This, again, this SPU is sales price per unit times the contribution rate. Now, list the 4 steps in the control process in order. Everybody remember the first? Okay, does that sound familiar? Establish standards and standard procedures. Okay, for everything that you do in your business, you're going to have a standard or a procedure. You have a recipe for every dish that you put out. For every cocktail that you make, you'll have a recipe. Okay, once you have those standards and procedures established, then what do? Train your employees? That's what I heard. Okay. So we've all gone through our training process. We all know what the standards and standard procedures are. Then what is the manager's job? Monitor performance. So we're doing this for every aspect in the restaurant. For the people that are doing our purchasing, we can get our financial reports and get a good idea if they are paying too much for the ingredients that we're using. We can tell if people are dropping plates in the dining room or in the kitchen, and we're losing plates and we're losing food. Okay. Let's say that I'm the manager and I come into the kitchen, and it's a busy night, and I see somebody, we have shrimp cocktail on our menu as an appetizer, and instead of 5 shrimp, they're putting 6 in it. So what am I going to do? Say it loud for us. Okay, there's a word, there's 2 words for that. And take corrective action. Okay. Okay, so that's where you're going to guide the staff through whatever issues that they are having. Something very often it's just that they need a reminder of what's going on. Did we talk about the discipline process? I'm going to talk about it again just in case. So taking corrective action is not discipline. Discipline is when you start documenting things an employee is doing to create an argument for either suspending them or eventually firing them. So, for example, we had a standard at Beau Rivage when we did cakes for the buffet. But you had to cut each cake into 16 pieces. And periodically I would go through and monitor to see what the cakes were looking like. There were a few cakes that because they weren't as tall, like they might have been a shorter kind of a cake, we wanted them cut into 14 slices. So if anybody's ever cut a cake into 16 slices, 8 or 12 slices, it's really pretty easy because you just cut the cake in half and you can rotate the cake and you can see where you're going to have to make the cake, the cuts. Because you cut the whole width of the cake. You don't just go slice by slice. But when you cut by 14, that means you're going to cut it in half and then you're going to cut each half into 7 slices. So it takes a little bit more skill. So if we had a cake that had to be cut into 14 slices, normally we would do that, assign that to somebody that did have the skill, and it was up to them to be able to train the rest of the staff that was cutting cakes. So if I saw some of those cakes that were cut into 16 instead of 14, I would go and do a review with it. But if it kept happening again and again, some people are just afraid to even try to do it to your standard. Then I would take that person and say, okay, we've had this problem for a long time now. This is maybe 3 weeks into the process. And we keep cutting these cakes into 16 instead of 14. And the guest isn't getting the proper portion. So what I have to do is I'm going to do what is called a verbal warning, which is the first step in the discipline process. We're going to go sit in the office. I'm going to fill out a form saying that you're getting a verbal warning, and that if you continue this action, you're going to get a written warning. And it goes on for more time. So the next week, call that employee into the office. And this time you have a written warning, which is very much like a verbal warning, except it's called a written warning. It's documented, it's dated, the employee signs it, or they refuse to sign it, it doesn't really matter. But it's a document that indicates, we're talking again about the same subject. These cakes need to be cut into 14 instead of 16. So that's the second step in the disciplinary process. At that time, you also tell the employee, okay, the next time that this happens, I'm going to have to suspend you without pay. So a week later, if anything happens, you can suspend them without pay for 2 or 3 days, whatever you feel is necessary. In my experience, most employees usually quit by this point. But if they did come back and they continue to do the same actions, then you can do discipline and you could have them fired for doing, that's continuing to do inadequate performance. Some exceptions to that are a no call, no show. That's typically grounds for immediate dismissal. Also, I told one employee that we were going to have to do a verbal warning, and she immediately walked off the job, and that is also cause for immediate dismissal. Okay, so any questions on the control process or corrective action? Now, it could be, I also use that example of cutting the cake into 14 pieces as perhaps an opportunity for management to review your standards and say, well, maybe it would be a lot easier for them to cut it into 12 pieces, and we can take that cost of the loss of 2 pieces of cake instead of them putting up portions that are too small, or getting different size cake, or there could be other corrective actions that you could take. But you're going to look for the best solution. You really don't want to, especially if you don't have the correct equipment to do the job, you don't want to expect people to be able to do something that they just can't do. All right, so next question. Steak in our restaurant sells for $30. The food cost is $12. What is the food cost percent for the steak? So food cost percent is equal to the food cost divided by the food sales. In this case, food cost is 12, and we're selling it for 30. .4, but we want to make that percentage. So the answer is 40%. Okay, next one, variable costs are $485,000 and sales are 1.225 million. We want to know what our variable rate is. So variable rate is just the ratio of your variable costs to sales. So it's going to be equal to variable costs divided by sales. And then this is a number that we round up to 3 decimal points. So it comes out to 0.396. And in this case, could we also say what the contribution rate is? Pardon me? So how do you get that? Okay, so yeah, we can't figure it out because by definition, the variable rate plus the contribution rate have to add up to 1. So contribution rate is equal to 1 minus 6. and it'll come out to 0.604. So sometimes you might see a question like this one, and you might get the variable rate instead of the contribution rate. So you would have to go ahead and do that subtraction before you do the rest of the calculation. And you can have all these formulas on a handwritten or a typed cheat sheet for whenever we have quizzes or exams in class. Start preparing those as soon as possible. Okay, so, surprise. What level of sales is necessary to break even if fixed costs are $258,000 and the variable rate is 0.445? So when we break even, how much is profit? Zero. Your sales and expenses are the same thing. So the sales required is equal to so that's the formula we're going to do. We need to know the sales required, fixed cost plus profit divided by the contribution rate. Well, we said profit is equal to zero, so it's just going to be equal to 258,000 and divide that by 1 minus the contribution rate. Pardon me? Right, and I just, when I did the formula, I just typed it in there. Should come out to 46,000, or I'm sorry, $464,864.86. So any questions on that? So this is an important formula in there, sales required. And then above also the guest required. And I will, I'm going to post this up on Moodle. Like the lecture will be up there as well as this document. Okay, so the next thing we have is popularity index, and we have 10 menu items here. Actually, we have 11. Okay. So popularity index, does anybody remember what that is? There's another term for it that we use probably a little bit more. Sales mix percentage, yes. So popularity index is the same thing as your sales mix percentage. And to calculate that, we're just going to take all of these entrees over here and add them up. It comes to a total of 1,013, which is down here. So we're going to do this divided by, I'm just going to type in 1013. And it's already set up to do a percentage. So that shows you on a percentage basis what your top sellers are. And because your sales numbers are going to change over different periods of times, you want to track the percentages because you can always base the percentage of sales and instead of the actual numbers. Because one week you might only have 800 people come in, but your sales mix may change or may stay the same. So people that are running Raising Cane's, they don't really have to do a sales mix percentage because they sell fried chicken strips. And that's what they sell. So people either buy those or French fries, whatever they get, something to bring. But a place like Popeyes or McDonald's that has a varied menu, this would be of interest to them. Going to tell them how many quarter pounders they need to order, how many chicken breasts, or how many orders of spicy chicken or regular chicken that they need to order to run their operation. And then we could use this if we had reservations for, let's say, 1,500 people. We can just multiply that 1,500 times the sales percentage. And determine we can do something like a prep list about how much we would have to prep for in order to serve 1,500 people based on a sales mix that covers a period of time. And then you could add like 5% to each of these so that you would have enough on hand in case somebody orders more of something else. So that's another reason why you want to keep track of your sales mix. We're also going to take a look at that when we do menu analysis. Okay, so calculate the appropriate menu price for Ville Marcella. If the cost percent is 22%, then the food cost for the item is $4.57. So food cost percent to food cost divided by food sales. So if I want, which one of those numbers am I trying to figure out? It's the food sales menu price. So I'm going to rewrite the equation, multiply both sides by food sales, and then divide both sides by food cost percent. So then I'm going to get my total food sales by dividing the food cost of 457 by 22%. I've been looking for $20.77. So that's one way that you might go about setting a menu price. You determine what food cost percent that you want to get from this menu item. And you know what your food costs are because you can buy the ingredients to make it, and you can go ahead and do those calculations. Okay, $20.77. You can go up to like $20.99, whatever makes sense on the menu. Any questions on that? Okay, so the next thing that we have is an income statement. Top portion, we have sales. Total sales is 1.7 million. We have our prime costs, which add up to a little bit more than $1 million. And then our overhead is $432,000. So what is the food cost percentage? So we're using that same formula. Food cost percentage is equal to food cost divided by food sales. And food cost is 350 divided by 1.2 million for the food sales. And that it's not a dollar sign. This is the percentage. So the answer should be 29.2%. Beverage costs. Can anybody tell me beverage cost percentage without using a calculator? 50%. It's $250,000 divided by $500,000. So that's 50%. And because the way this is laid out, I can just copy that down, and it does the same calculations, dividing the 250 by 500. Okay, labor cost percent. It's going to be salaries, wages, and benefits added together. And then divided by what? The what? Total sales, okay, of 1.7 million. Make sure you go up and compare it to sales, because I've seen a lot of students compare it to total costs, and that doesn't have anything to do with it. The labor cost percent is 28.2%. What is the profit or the loss for that year? So we're going to take profit is equal to your sales minus your expenses. So our sales, 1.7 million. We have two different expense categories that we're going to subtract. So the first one is our prime cost, and then the second one is our overhead. And so that gives us This is the profit of $189,122. So those are the only questions that we ask about this. Is it possible now to figure out your contribution rate? What about your variable rate? This is going to be a clue right here what I have highlighted. What don't we know in order to figure those rates out? Okay, good. It's in these highlighted areas for the labor costs, we don't know which are variable costs and which are fixed costs. The hourly employees are going to be the variable costs, and the salaried employees are the fixed costs. But looking at this report, we don't have that information. We better have it somewhere. But I wouldn't be able to ask you that question on this. If I had it broken down with, if this was just, that was salaries and benefits, and this is wages. And then we could go ahead, because salaries are going to be fixed, wages are variable. We could go ahead and solve and figure out what our contribution rate is and what our variable rate is. Okay, and then at the end here, we just have some exercises. Looking at the food, beverage, labor cost percentages, and using the same formulas to solve for a different variable in each one. So calculate the sales price given the following information. Food cost is $2.50. Food cost percentage is 8.7%. So what am I dividing by what? Or what am I multiplying? Okay, I'm dividing the food cost by the food cost percentage. And just if you think about it, I'm looking for the sales price. Is it going to be higher or lower than $2.50? It's going to be higher. We want to sell our food for more than what it costs us. So 250 divided by 28.74. That food cost percent is really, really low for a food cost percent. And it's near impossible to sell something that's worth $2.50 for $28.74. Food cost percent of 33%, that's more realistic. 719 divided by, oops, 33. Okay. That comes out to $21.79. So then the last one, $1.44. Divided by 18. Oops. So even like 19.9 or 20% food cost percent gives you a little bit more realistic menu price. This is at 8.7%. I'm not sure I can think of anything that you could sell with that much of a markup on it. Okay, so now we have food costs that we want to figure out, and we're given the sales price and the food cost percentage. So how do we do that? Okay, so we're going to multiply these two numbers together. The sales price times the food cost percentage. And that comes out, the first one is $4. And that's 40% of $10. Okay. So for the next one, 947 times 30%, that comes out to $2.84. So notice this is our food cost, and it's less than our menu price, which makes sense. Times 20%. And then that comes out to $7.75. Okay, and then if we're calculating beverage cost percent, it's just going to be beverage cost divided by beverage sales. So the first one would be 14.8%. This one is 49%. Last one is 32%. Okay, so any questions on anything on this? Is there anything else that you remember from module 1 that you have questions about? Has everybody had a chance to do the module 1 quizzes? I did extend them until Friday. I also gave you a second chance because I know some people tried them and got a pretty low score. So if you're welcome to retake it, each quiz, and it will average your scores. Okay, any other questions about what's gonna happen in this class? You all saw the new schedule posted on Google. Okay. Our second fall break is canceled, Thanksgiving break is canceled. Um, And then in December, classes are going to extend an extra week. And finals are going to be a week later. Okay, just let me know, contact me if you have any questions, and, have a good day.